Welcome in, newest edition of Caught Stealing, the fantasy baseball podcast here at fantasyalarm.com. Special edition coming at you before our normally scheduled time on Thursdays because quite a notable baseball event just came and went with the MLB trade deadline. Of course, if you've been following along, we are recording this at just before 6:30 p.m. So, of course, after 6 p.m., there were trades rolling in. It does not matter when it gets announced on X. I believe it's when it's sent to the league office and we find out about it. So that's why you'll see trades roll in after the deadline, and your team may or may not have got someone that you may or may not have wanted. A lot of big names were on the market. We're going to talk about the players, the fantasy relevant players, I should say, that did move. And we'll also talk about some of the ones that didn't, that maybe many thought would get moved. But we're going to talk some trade deadline here. My team made a couple moves. Matt's team made a couple of moves. Give Matt a follow over on X at the Selz Man. So, Matt, we're going to jump into some trade deadline talk. So let me just get started with this. One, tell everyone how you're doing. And two, what a seller's market the deadline was this year.
Yeah. So you may hear me cough a little bit. I'm going to try and mute myself if I'm coughing. I've been sick for the last 3 days or so. Finally getting over it just in time for an absolute bevy of trades today. Some of them were hard to understand. Some of them were easier to understand. We're going to get into a lot of them. But yeah, and to be honest, the trade deadline didn't just start today. Like, these trades have been rolling in for about a week now. It feels like it started with big names like Randy Arozarena being dealt a couple of days ago. Who else? We saw the Rays and Marlins making moves as early as last week. AJ Puck was one of the guys moved last week. So yeah, it's been kind of rolling for a while. Some of the teams seem to get the memo. Some of them, I'm not sure they did. Talking to you there, Minnesota, are you aware that there was a trade deadline today? You're the only team that didn't make a move in the entire week leading up to the deadline.
That they did. I guess the optimist amongst the Minnesota faithful is saying we didn't need to do anything to
I mean,
hold
Cleveland
the
didn't do
division.
anything last year and won the division, but everybody else sold. And now
Right.
you've got the Twins not doing anything, and only two of the five teams sold. The Royals and the Guardians both bought. So one of them was from my team. It's a weird trade deadline.
That it is. And we were talking before we got on air, and I think it kind of shows to it. Like typically we get many deadlines, and it's like, oh my gosh, a big asset moved, a big name player moved. We jumped on, and we're sitting there talking like, who was the biggest name dealt? And it's like, was it maybe Rosarena, maybe Jazz Chisholm, maybe Tanner Scott? It's not like in years past where it's like last year Verlander.
Right.
Previous years, you have big name guys that move at the deadline.
Yeah, and you had
This year,
Scherzer last year too.
and Scherzer. And that's what it comes down to. Like this year, not to discredit Jazz or Rosarena or some of the other guys moved at the deadline, but when you go into a deadline with names like Tarek Skubal, Luis Robert Jr., Garrett Crochet, and we get a Rosarena and Jazz, it's kind of like no super big name was moved per se, but there is some fantasy baseball implications of it. We'll talk about some winners and losers later on, but extreme sellers market. You look at like the Marlins did pretty well with some of their deals and the returns that they got. There are other teams. This might not be surprising to many people, but as a Houston Texans fan, I do follow many in the Houston space. And my feed on X last night was obliterated with the Houston
Pitchforks and
the
riots.
Houston diehards going nuts over what they gave up
Yep.
for Yusei Kikuchi. I couldn't tell you how many screenshots I saw of Kikuchi's stat line saying we just gave up A, B, and C for this, and it's screenshots of his stat line. It's a seller's market. If you wanted to buy a player, it takes two to tango. You can't just go, oh,
Well,
I want Tanner Scott. Okay, well, we're going to give you, we want this. We're actually going to
it's
give you this.
it
Okay,
was a
deal.
seller's market for some teams.
Well,
I
true.
don't know that memo got to everybody. Talking to you there, Detroit, who I don't know. You sold the biggest name pitcher on the market, and you got basically nobody. But yeah, the Tanner Scott return was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like a rental reliever going to an already stacked bullpen for San Diego garnered 4 prospects. Graham Pauley, who started with the team this year in the major leagues and is capable of playing in the majors right now, which is great because I think he's going to have to play 7 positions for Miami. Right before we started, I saw a tweet that said the Marlins have 19 minutes to add 7 guys to their roster to have a team for tonight. That's how many dudes they moved out today. And then they got Adam Major, who back end starter, okay, but he was a number 5 prospect for the Padres, and then Robbie Snelling, who number 2, number 3 prospect for them, top 100 guy. Could be a number 2 starter down the road. Like, that's a crazy return for a rental reliever. Granted, arguably the best reliever on the market. But then the Astros turn around and give up Jake Bloss, who was supposed to start for them yesterday. Joey Loperfido, who is arguably their best bat in a prospect. And then who was the other? Will Wagner, son of Billy Wagner, for a middling, aging Yusei Kikuchi. That may be the worst. That may be the worst give up at the trade deadline.
Baltimore. Well, let me mention something with the Marlins first. Then I'm going to get into Baltimore. If you go over to Fangraphs,
yes,
and you go to Roster Resource, the Marlins.
Their roster's in flames right now. Like the server that's responsible for putting that together is in flames right now.
Right now, here's their 5-man starting rotation per roster resource. Ready? Edward Cabrera, Max Mayer, Kyle Tyler. That's their 5-man rotation right now per roster resource, with a lineup of Xavier Edwards, Vidal Brujan, Jake Burger, Jesus Sanchez, Otto Lopez, Jonah Bride, Nick Gordon, Forrest Wall, and Nick Fortes. Fantasy Baseball Winners is going to be streaming against the Marlins post from August on. Streaming against the Marlins. In DFS, you're going to have some no-name bum on the mound. They're going to be a $9,000 pitcher because they have 2 bats they have to worry about.
Yeah, Jake Burger is one of them, and whoever wakes up on the right side of the day, that day.
It's that's gonna be a. But hey, remember back in April, said we probably weren't making playoffs.
That's true. They did give us the heads up 2 months ago.
They're confirming this now for us with this move, trading Jazz as well, getting rid of Josh Bell.
They did get nice returns.
So let's talk. Let's talk about the Orioles one, because this is actually one of the moves that stood out to me. So obviously we knew Baltimore was going to be poking around the pitcher market.
Correct.
Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Flaherty, pretty much any pitcher with a pulse and maybe a sub-5 ERA, actually a sub-6 ERA, Baltimore was probably going to be sniffing around, knowing that they need pitching help. They do get Trevor Rogers, one of the guys I really liked coming into the year, and I have liked overall, trading Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, 2 well-known prospects by name.
Yes.
Do they rank well for you? I know MLB had Norby as a 5 prospect, and Stowers is actually getting into his mid-20s at this point. So is the return that they got for Trevor Rogers sizable, or is it more inflated by name value?
I think it's inflated by name value. And I think if we look at a couple of things here with Trevor Rogers, because I've seen, looking at the surface level stats, not great this year, right? Mid-4s ERA, the expected numbers not that much lower, in some cases a little higher. The strikeouts haven't been great. The walks have been okay. Home runs, not great. Okay. Since June 1st, Trevor Rogers has had a sub 3.5 ERA over the last 54 innings pitched, right? Strikeout still, okay, but a sub 3.5 ERA, pretty helpful, right? If you go back to 2022, Trevor Rogers, the bulk of his home runs that he has given up have been to righty hitters. Where do righty hitters hit him? They hit him to left field. What stadium has the deepest left field in baseball? Camden Yards. Okay, so that mitigates a little bit. I get it. You're on the surface, you're giving up Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for a guy who may not make your postseason rotation. Okay, but can you tell me that Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby were going to make your postseason roster or your roster next year? Everybody's clamoring for Colby Mayo. You know who was in his way? Connor Norby. You know who can't really hit major league pitching that well? Connor Norby. You know who also can't hit major league pitching that well right now? Kyle Stowers. In 160 plus plate appearances, the guy's got a 35% strikeout rate in the majors, and he's 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not talking about a 22-year-old guy. You're talking about a guy who's quickly approaching what is normally the cutoff for a big contract. And they gave him up for a pitcher who, when he's right, like in 2021, can be an efficient innings-eating lefty with strikeout stuff. Do they have some work to do? Yes. Can the Orioles fix people? Yes. They have fixed a bunch of pitchers at this point that we should believe that it's an okay deal. And so, yes, granted, everybody lost their freaking minds on Twitter because all of the at-home prospect people who think they know more than GMs of baseball teams, and yes, I know I'm one of them, you don't know what they know. And if they see something like, well, Trevor Rogers has been stuck with a revolving door of an offense and no defense, and a revolving door of a pitching staff, and a revolving door of a coaching staff, and a revolving door at catcher for the last 3 years, plus he's coming off an injury, then great. And to everybody who wanted him to go get Scooble and Crochet and Flaherty, Flaherty's got about 9 months of healthy pitching. Like, sure, he's looked great this year, and he looked great in his rookie year for St. Louis 4 years ago. Okay, Garrett Crochet's already at his innings limit, pretty much, and was demanding an extension if he was going to start in the postseason. With 1 year, with one half a season of starting experience in the majors.
Yep.
And Tariq Skubal, yes. Is he finally living up to what everybody hoped and dreamed he would be as a prospect? Yes. But again, he's missed time with injury. So are you going to give up 8 prospects to get question marks, or are you going to give up 2 that are blocked to get question marks? I think it's perfectly fine. If it doesn't work, oh well. If Connor Norby becomes the next Babe Ruth, so be it. They still have Colby Mayo and Heston Kjerstad and Jackson Holliday and Samuel Basallo and all of the dudes they drafted this year that look like those guys. They're not hurting for bats. Oh, yeah, and by the way, they traded for like 4 more outfielders today, including Eloy Jimenez.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how they work him because you really can't stick him in the field. So he's going to DH. They have enough bats. He probably is not going to play against righties. Eloy's probably
No,
going
I
to
think
be
he's taking Austin Hayes' lefty platoon.
he's going to be a small side platoon guy.
And they basically gave up nothing for him. They gave up
Sure.
a 26-year-old AAA reliever.
Yeah, that's fine. You can live with that.
Right. Exactly.
So is my assumption correct that your biggest question mark from the deadline is WTF? Are you doing Minnesota? Is that your biggest question?
There's a few.
Okay.
What are the Giants doing?
Fair.
Because they sold Jorge Soler and Alex Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't move Blake Snell.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought in Mark Canha, as my cat apparently has questions too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a mixed bag, right? Like, if you are going for it, why not bring in Canha and keep Soler and Cobb? Because you didn't exactly get a huge return for either of those guys. I don't know. The White Sox, I mean, I know they were handicapped by Crochet's want for an extension and whatnot. but it kind of feels like you got nothing back for Eloy, who is at least tradable. Um, you did okay on the Eric Fedee move. I do like those prospects.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of those, but I think in general, those are my two biggest question marks.
I think those are two good ones. I have other question marks. We'll talk a little bit
I mean,
later on.
Baltimore's outfield a little bit, but they're just getting bats that they can plug in places.
Yeah, we'll talk about mine later on because albeit one's a fantasy baseball winner, I'm also going to question it
Right,
pretty
mine was more
heavily.
so like real
So
baseball,
yeah, that's fair.
um, fantasy
That was the point of that
baseball,
question. So
fantasy baseball wise.
well, we'll get there. We'll get there at
Yeah,
the end,
I
fantasy baseball wise.
yeah, it's going to take a little bit to sort out.
Ain't that the truth? So Matt, let's put fun little exercise here. I'm gonna have you grade the trade from both teams' perspectives. We talked about some of these already, but just because my feed on X blew up with the Yusei Kikuchi deal, give me your grade for the teams on these deals. Obviously, Houston had to do something on the mound. They go get Kikuchi. Did give up a little bit for him. So from the Toronto side and the Houston side, how would you grade this deal?
I would say probably a B for Toronto.
Okay.
They got, Jake Bloss isn't an elite starting pitching guy. He's a mid rotation guy. They needed arms. They've got several years of control over him. Loberfito is a better bat that can play multiple positions than they have currently in their system. Um, and we'll see what happens with Will Wagner. Not sure on that one. From the Astros side, on the surface, it's a D, but the Astros have also been known to tweak pitch mixes and figure
Mm-hmm.
stuff out. But like, I don't know, man. Kikuchi's not been great for a while now, so I don't think it's just a pitch mix thing. I think it's just he's an aging guy who's lost a touch.
I will agree with you there. And it's one of those things too, like in these markets, the one thing that, we see it a lot with like trading in fantasy sports is we sit in our league. You look, oh,
Right.
I would never do that deal. One, you don't know the league dynamics. And two,
Correct.
right now in this market, if you wanted some, depending on the team you were talking to, other than Detroit, you could do what you want with Detroit. But with other teams, you had to pay up. That was the market. That's
Right.
what it was. So you had to do it. So I'm going to give you a little chance to opine on your team here. Lane Thomas goes from Washington to Cleveland, but Washington in return, lefty Alex Clemmie, Rafael Ramirez Jr., shortstop, and third baseman Jose, I believe it's Tenna.
Yes.
So 3 prospects back. Obviously, you do lose Lane Thomas, no notable left-handed masher, at least in years past. Grade this trade from Cleveland's perspective, needing a little offensive thump, and also from your Washington squad as they continue to stockpile young talent.
I would say it's probably a B minus for Cleveland. Lane Thomas has been pretty good. Last year he was a 2020 guy. Been a little slow to start this year, although he's dealt with some injuries and not quite as good of a lineup, I guess, around him. Um, but yeah, Cleveland needed a bat. They got him, right? Just to help balance out the lineup there a little bit. There's a year and a half of control left on Lane Thomas. From the Nats side, I would say a B. Jose Tena's nothing special, but he is major league ready. Basically, he's having a very good season at AAA. He can play third. He can play a little bit of some other infield spots. So third base has been a sticking point for the Nats since basically Anthony Rendon left. Who, by the way, side note, is back on the IL today. Um, so that's a nice get. Alex Clemmie was a second round pick for the Guardians last year. He's a projectable prep arm who could be, if they get his control under control, could be a frontline starter. At the very least, he has the stuff to be a high leverage reliever from the left side. And then we'll see what happens with Rafael Ramirez. He's a 19-year-old shortstop. His dad played in the majors. The Nats have a bunch of shortstops. They're usually the most athletic guys on the field. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's a pretty nice return for Lane Thomas. So thank you, John Lester, because your rental turned into Lane Thomas.
It's always funny seeing how they all go. You just continue going down the lineage and
John
seeing.
Lester's 5.02 ERA on a rental turned into 3 years of 7 more from Lane Thomas, and now that package. So pretty nice.
Can't argue with that one at all. Let's talk about Jack Flaherty going from a bounce back year in Detroit, heading out west to the Dodgers. He becomes the latest injury prone starter to enter that rotation. And the return for Flaherty in this market is probably general consensus saying a bit underwhelming. I am really curious to hear how you grade this one, because you already kind of basically said dealing with Detroit, you could kind of do what you wanted, but curious here what you think on this one.
Yeah, look, it came late, like 5 minutes left in the trade deadline. Clearly there's some medicals going on with Jack Flaherty. We all know the history of the shoulder problems. The Orioles took a shot on him last year.
Mhm.
They took a flyer on him, hoping that if he was healthy, he could be their ace in the hole down the stretch. Didn't work out. So it is, on one hand, it is interesting to see the Dodgers go after another injured starter, because that's literally their entire rotation is guys coming back from injury or dealing with injuries. So I would say, in terms of the guys available, based on the season they're having, I would say probably C plus, B minus. I mean, yeah, based on the stuff, if he's healthy, it's a B. Based on their situation, it's a C. So I'm gonna middle it with a B minus. The return for Detroit is a D. Like, I don't know if it's the Dodgers prospect cachet that was involved. I don't know. They got like the fourth best catching prospect out of the Dodgers system, and Trey Sweeney, who was a former first rounder of the Yankees, who was traded this offseason to the Dodgers in the Dodgers Yankees trade this offseason. But they're okay. Like, they're not great. And for a market that just saw Yusei Kikuchi go for what he went for, and Tanner Scott on a rental to go for what he went for, and you have literally the last tradable starter on the market, and you get that. I I don't know. Unless you're eating money, like, there's got to be something else to this deal that we don't know quite yet. Whether it's medical scared the ever loving daylights out of the Dodgers, but they went ahead with it because they need another arm, or somebody's eating money somewhere and that reduced the package of prospects. I don't know, but that seemed like an incredibly light return for Flaherty.
Especially with him being one of the more notable arms on the market. I would
Yes.
agree with you there. I want to find a deal where you give an A or an F. I've gotten you to about a B as well as a D. I want to try to
Yes.
get to an A or an F, and I think I have one that might do it. We talked about the Tanner Scott trade. Somehow the Marlins got 3 of San Diego's top 5 prospects per MLB.com rankings. We'll have to see where I'll pull up where you have them in your ranking as well.
I can tell you because I've started moving guys around already.
So you've done that, but is the Tanner Scott to San Diego trade, do we get an A or an F on either side here? Because that's a heck of a haul for Miami.
You get an A from Miami for
Okay,
sure.
cool.
Robbie Snelling is a frontline starter. He's currently ranked 37th overall in my rankings. I have to update those because there's still some guys who no longer qualify that are still in there, like, Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, those guys no longer qualify. So these guys are going to move up. Graham Pauley was a top 100 prospect, top 80 prospect in my rankings. Adam Major, he's kind of an old school pitcher. Like, he's effective. Think of him like George Kirby mixed with Kyle Hendricks. Like, he's gonna get guys out, but it's not gonna be. It's gonna be control and pitchability and whatnot. But to get that, plus there was a fourth guy. He's a lower tier prospect. But to get that for Tanner Scott, who, to be honest, I'm not sure that the Padres really needed. Uh, that's an A plus return for Miami there. I'm gonna go. It's hard to give San Diego anything less than a C for that trade because he is the best relief arm on the market.
Sure.
But I don't know, like, did you have to push that hard for a rental? There's rumors that the Dodgers were after him, and that's what pushed the Padres to go give more, which I could get. But I'm gonna give the Padres a C. They did get Brian Hoeing, so they did get 2 arms out of it, but still, that's an awfully big haul for relief help.
And I mean, they traded, albeit less notable, not bad arms or bad prospects, less notable, but they also sent 3 to the Rays for Jason Adam. Like they fully went all in on relievers.
Yeah, their top 2 pitching prospects, Robbie Snelling and Dylan Lesko, who were supposed to be the front of their rotation, both gone. Both went to Florida, 2 different teams. Trying to remember who else was in that deal for Homer Bush
and JD Gonzalez.
Yeah. That's a lot of prospects for relief. Like I would, if you made one of those moves, fine. Making both of those moves, this feels like a career-breaking move for AJ Preller.
I was going to say, it feels like AJ Preller knows he's out the door anyway.
Like, yeah. It seems like a Dave Dombrowski type move where you take a wild card team and you absolutely just obliterate the farm system to try to get some rental pieces and some help for a stretch where you can't win a division and see what happens.
Yeah, and let's wrap it up here a
The
little.
rotation still sucks too.
Yeah,
it's not like they gave up that much and got rotation help.
Agreed.
Although they did get Martin Perez, so
they did. Let's talk a little fantasy baseball winners and losers here. We can touch on these quick. Obviously, there's still going to be a lot that we shake through as we see kind of how teams deploy some of their new pieces or the gaps that they fill. One that I really like, Lucas Erceg has been pretty good for Oakland this year for the most part. We talked about it last week. I said Kansas City was going to be in the reliever market. That was not a bold prediction by any means. They dipped their toes with Hunter Harvey. They added Erceg. He could see some save opportunities. He may not be the guy. He's going to see some. If your league value saves, I mean, obviously most do, but if it also does holds, Kansas City added a little bit there to their team as well. So I like Erceg a little bit. And then another one I like, he actually was sent to the minors after his last start. Hayden Birdsong in San Fran showed a little ability to miss some bats. The team got rid of Alex Cobb, and the return of Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb was signaling kind of the, no pun intended, the swan song of Birdsong in their rotation. Cobb's now in Cleveland.
Yeah.
There's an open spot in that rotation. Birdsong should come back up, and if he pitches like he has, he can be a pretty valuable fantasy asset and hold a rotation spot the rest of the way. I wouldn't be surprised if he did it.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are 2 good ones. By the way, we also forgot the Orioles traded for Zach Eflin over the last week as well.
Old news, not even trade deadline news. That was so long ago.
I know, but like
eons ago.
Gregory Soto and Sir Anthony Dominguez, nice ads too there.
The Padres still had 7 prospects when Eflin was traded.
That's true. So some winners. Hard to disagree with your ones. If Jack Flaherty is healthy, going to a winning Dodgers team, that certainly helps. I do think Josh Bell going to the Diamondbacks is an underrated one because we saw Christian Walker is going to wind up on the IL today. He's saying 3 weeks ish for his oblique.
I'll take the over.
Tightness. It's a little quick to come back, although it was a relatively good news MRI apparently as far as those go.
I'll take the over.
So Josh Bell is going to be, I would assume, the starting first baseman for Arizona while Walker's out, and then we'll see what happens because they already have a couple of different DH guys, so we'll see there. Max Mayer's a winner because he finally got to come back up to the Marlins after dominating at AAA.
Mm-hmm.
Losers though, Tanner Scott's a loser.
Agreed.
because who the heck knows who's getting anything in the Padres bullpen. They may only run their starters out for 4 innings and then just say beat us over the next 5 innings.
Yep.
So there's that. Hard to say Randy Arozarena is a winner or a loser because like I think his skill set just plays wherever he is.
Mm-hmm.
How about Dylan Carlson?
Mm.
Because now he's going to have basically full starting playing time in Tampa because they have nobody else to play in the outfield, and was clearly going to be the odd man out in St. Louis. So there's some under the radar winners and losers for you, I guess.
If Tommy Edman comes back healthy, going to the Dodgers could be really interesting because if they want to ease the burden when Mookie comes back and maybe move Ohtani around, yes, Edman can hit leadoff. Will
Yes.
they? Don't know, but he can, and he'll give a little defense too. So,
how about Jazz Chisholm and some multi-position availability?
okay,
they're sticking him at third.
Thanks for the segue, because that's the one I'm going to get to, because this one is interesting. In terms of park factors, he is getting a power upgrade going to New York.
Seriously. Yeah, in that entire division except for Camden Yards.
It's very, very interesting, and only the Yankees can do this. How you just trade someone they've never played that position, at least in recent memory, and you're like, yep, we're going to try them there.
I don't know. The Dodgers did it.
So this actually leads to a fantasy baseball loser of mine, but it's intertwined, so just bear with me.
Okay.
A name that's starting to pop up a little bit in our Discord. I've seen it a couple times now, and I always feel like I'm the one throwing cold water on from the bucket and kind of like quelling the excitement. I think Jasson Dominguez is a loser in this fantasy baseball from the trade deadline. If the Jazz Chisholm experience does not work at third base, they have the 3 outfielder spots and a DH for Soto, Stanton, Judge, Verdugo, Dominguez, if they call him up, and Chisholm. Yeah. If the Chisholm experience doesn't work at third base, you have to play Chisholm because you traded for him. Obviously, right, you have to play Juan Soto because he's kind of good at this game. And you have to play Aaron Judge because he's the captain. Not because he's good at baseball, because he's the captain. Right. So you have 2 of those locked down. So you have 2 spots, 1 more remaining outfield spot, and a DH for Chisholm, Verdugo, Dominguez, and Stanton. I can't confidently tell people to pick up Jasson Dominguez and expect regular at bats in that lineup. I can't come up with a pathway for it.
Right, because like even if you say the third base doesn't work for Chisholm, right?
Well, Glaber's not moving.
Glaber clearly doesn't want to move. Schmuck. You still have LeMahieu when he's healthy. You could play him at third. Not ideal, but there's that. Clearly Volpe is where he is. I'm with you. I don't see where Jasson Dominguez is getting into this lineup.
Yep.
I just, unless you have him, can he, like, the only way is if you're sitting there going, well, he's a switch hitter, so you could theoretically platoon him and,
so he's small side platoon.
Whatnot. But, like, there's not enough at bats out of that.
Mm-mm.
Like, you're not sitting Giancarlo Stanton paying him $35 million a year.
Nope.
As bad and as, whatnot as he can be. Ben Rice has been spectacular. You're not playing anybody else at first base, right? Unless Rizzo, when Rizzo comes back, okay. But then there's another thing. Like, Ben Rice has been good. Do you then play Ben Rice at DH?
Mm-hmm.
And sit Giancarlo? Because now you got the lefty-righty deal that you can pull off.
Yep.
I'm with you. I think Jasson Dominguez is a little locked right now. And if he's healthy and he comes back and plays a little bit in the minor leagues this year, the Yankees may flip him for some pitching in the offseason.
Very well could. That one, I think he's one of the biggest losers of mine from the deadline. AJ Puck, basically.
Like if you're Detroit and you're saying, okay, we're going to
Yeah.
hold on to Skubal and we need help in positions everywhere. And the Yankees are like, well, it's midseason. We're not ready to give up on Dominguez because if he's healthy and somebody else goes down, then we can call him up and whatever. But then the offseason comes. You're telling me that now that you have Jazz, who's under contract for another couple of years, and you have Judge, who you just signed, and you're going to try and sign Juan Soto to a long-term deal, you're seriously going to tell me you're not going to think about giving up Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones
Should.
for Tariq Skubal?
Yeah. Yep. I know another potential loser for me here. It's weird. It's weird to say a Baltimore Oriole is a potential loser, but I'm not terrified of Eloy per se. But I do think at bats get a little bit tougher for Heston Kjerstad. It's not like he was playing every day anyway, but they made a lot of moves. They brought a lot of new bats. Sure, Austin Hayes went out, but they brought more bats in than went out. Kjerstad was already seeing limited at bats. I'm a little worried about Kjerstad the rest of the way in terms of at bats, and God forbid they bring up any of those other prospects that they have down low or down in the minors. I don't know. I'm a little worried about Kjerstad.
Yeah, I would agree. He's kind of been struggling to begin with, and then they also brought in Christian Pache back in that Austin Hayes deal, so it was a one outfielder out, one outfielder in type move. Then they brought in Eloy today. They also brought in Austin Slater for some interesting reason. And they had already recalled Terran Bavra, who can play infield, but he's also an outfielder. So I too am concerned about. I mean, he's not been the most effective bat, but for those of you who are hunting the power that Kjerstad has, I think we're going to see less of it the rest of the way.
And I'll actually add another one in here. Carson Kelly's going from Detroit to Texas. Jonah Heim's still there. He's going to go from a relatively regular player to the second catcher.
Correct.
On that team. So just for you, probably more so y'all in like two catcher formats, maybe if you're playing in the TGFBI or whatever. I mean, it's not like Carson Kelly has been anything to write home about. 240 average this year, 105 WRC plus. When he does play, it'll be a little bit of a better cast around him in that Texas lineup, but he's not going to play as frequently. You're losing at bats from him here in
Correct.
Texas.
The Morale deal, I know we hadn't touched on that, but just what I don't know. I don't think it's that bad on the surface. I mean,
two big time power with questionable contact stuff for both of them. Can they fix it's basically, can each team fix the player that they got when they had the similar archetype before?
It's like the Bellinger, Jason Hayward.
Yep.
I know they weren't traded, but they were signed free agent at the other one's team, and they both got picked. So it's kind of that thing.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, that's a fantasy baseball look at the trade deadline that just occurred. A lot of moves are going to be out there, but of course, if you are a member of the family, a subscriber to Fantasy Alarm here in the Discord, did you have some players that were moved? Do you have some holes to fill now in your lineup? Do you maybe made some saves and you want to get a potential closer who has stepped in after some of these teams have dealt a bunch of their arms? Get in the Discord. Tag us, tag me, tag Matt, tag any of the great Fantasy Alarm folks that we have here. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts. And last but not least, your last action item, your last piece of homework. Follow me on X at Colby R. Conway. Follow Matt at the Selz Man. And we will see you next week